Well, I don't think it's your listening stick. I think it's the microphone you're using that actually is going to swap out. And you don't have to turn it off, I think, right?
No, you can leave it on.
Especially because.
Especially you might forget it.
Yeah, you might
muted
forget
it, and so I would just put the microphones on.
Yeah.
But
As long as you're not flicking the microphone or tapping it, I don't think it should matter at all. But yeah, I would prefer you leave it on just to make sure it gets into the live stream no matter what.
no, let's say that wire is still.
Yeah, I didn't think it might. Oh, there you are. I think it might be two. You have two? No, okay.
No, I think it's just
one down. Okay.
So you're at 12.
Testing, testing.
Yep, you're good.
Okay. CM levels?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, let's get going.
All right, go live.
All right.
Okay.
All right, good evening and good afternoon, I should say, and welcome to this candidate forum hosted by the Johnson County Post, featuring candidates vying for two Kansas House districts in the roughly Shawnee, western Lenexa area. We have four candidates up here today, and we'll give them a chance to introduce themselves shortly. But first, my name is Kyle Palmer. I'm the editor of the Johnson County Post, and I'm honored to be the moderator for this forum and the two more that will follow it this evening. We consider events like this our bread and butter. We've hosted such forums pretty much every year for the past 15 years since we were founded. They allow the readers and residents of Johnson County direct access to the people who would hold elected office and govern your communities. And the Post prides itself on giving you fact-based, informative coverage of your local communities that you can't find anywhere else, especially around election time, so we feel like this is the perfect way to demonstrate that service to you. If you are a subscriber to the Post, we want to thank you. It's your support that allows us to put on events like this. We would not be able to do our annual election coverage without your ongoing support. Most of our revenue indeed comes from the more than 7,500 paying subscribers to the Post. So if you do not currently subscribe but want to check us out, you can go to johnsoncountypost.com and see what we're all about. A big thanks to the Johnson County Library, who's co-sponsoring this event tonight at Monticello Library in Shawnee. Johnson County Library this fall is helping us put on 8 nights of forums between now and when early voting starts on October 19th. We want to thank the folks at the library for all their help and support. We're also live streaming this event tonight on the Post Facebook page, as we plan to do with the other forums that we have scheduled this month. So this forum in its entirety, as well as the other two that we do tonight, will be archived at our Facebook page so that voters can watch at any point as they prepare to cast their ballots up to and on November 5th. I also want to thank the candidates for being here tonight. Of course, running for office is time-consuming and labor-intensive. You are seeking a position that will directly impact our readers, and we appreciate you giving some of your time to help voters understand your positions on the important issues affecting our readers. I've already explained this to the candidates, but just for people watching online and in the room, I'll briefly lay out the format. Each candidate up here will get a chance to give an opening statement. Just to be clear, this is Kansas House District 17. That's on the far side, left side of the stage, or our presentation as you look at it, and then House District 18 to the right. After their opening statements and the candidates get a chance to introduce themselves, we will ask a series of questions based in part on reader input. Each candidate will be given the same questions, a chance to respond to those questions in the same amount of time. We want to get through as many questions as possible, so We'll limit response times probably between 1 minute and 90 seconds, and I'll make that clear when I ask the question, how much time you have to answer it. Also, if you're in the audience and you found an index card on your seat, you can write down the question that you want asked and hand it to Leah, who's around the room, and she can pass those up to me, and we can also ask some audience questions as well. So I have some planned questions, can take some questions from the audience as well. I will say if a candidate mentions their opponent by name in their response, or it's clear they are referencing the other candidate, we may give that other candidate a chance to respond for up to 30 seconds. That's done as a courtesy. Again, for the candidates, post reporter Leah Wacom is the timekeeper. She's already explained this to you, but I'll remind you, so she'll put she's changing her lenses on her cameras right now, but you've already seen the yellow sign, that's your 30-second warning that your time is about to expire, and then the red sign means that your time is up. That's done as a courtesy. We do not cut your microphones, but we just allow you to wrap up your thought after that. Also want to highlight Kaylee McLaughlin running the cameras and Andrew Gogg running the live stream as well. Those are post reporters and post staffers staying late on a Thursday night to help us do this. So without any further ado, let's allow these candidates in House District 17 and 18 to introduce themselves by a very scientific process. We had Joella Hoye pick the Scrabble tile to go first. That's the order we'll go in. We'll go from left to right down the table. And so we'll start in House District 17 and give Joella Hoye a chance, 1 minute, to introduce herself.
Good evening, Johnson County Post, Johnson County Library. Thank you for hosting us. I'm Joella Hoye. I have the honor of representing District 17 in the Kansas House of Representatives, and I'm up for re-election this year. I live in Lenexa with my husband, our 7th grader William, and our little dachshund Tonks. I felt she deserved a shout out tonight. I originally got involved in running for office because I was a volunteer with Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense America. I was involved with the PTA, and that work made me believe it's important to make my voice heard in Topeka. I went from being a citizen testifying on the House Federal and State Affairs Committee to being the ranking minority member on that committee in my second term. Something unexpected this election season for my re-election is the amount of excitement and around this particular election. So if you're like me this election cycle and you're looking for joy, go vote Hoye on November 5th.
We'll stay in House District 17 and now move the microphone over to Michael Kerner. Allow you a chance to introduce yourself, Michael.
Hello, my name is Michael Kerner, and I represent the Libertarian Party. I'm running for the 17th District seat in the State House. If you have never heard of us, we're the people who cherish personal freedom. Most of us got to be Libertarians because we're students of history, and we know how easy it is for governments to get out of control and the damage that they can do. We want to preserve those rights that individuals must have to limit the doings of government. For example, I vehemently oppose any version of gun control, even the most common sense disruptions favored by my opponent. That is the camel's nose under the tent that will ultimately lead to total civilian disarmament and leave us open to tyranny. Don't say that can't happen here, as you propose removing just the protections that have ensured it did not happen here. Governments, federal and state, treat us like cattle to be milked through taxation. I have specific proposals to limit this power, at least for local taxes. Current law requires a public hearing when a taxing authority wants to exceed the revenue neutral rate.
And just, finish that thought, finish that final thought.
Okay, this happens all the time because of runaway inflation. Instead of a public hearing, I want a public vote for them to be able to exceed revenue neutral. Thank you.
Well, thank you to the candidates in House District 17. You did mention Joella, but we'll talk guns. We'll have plenty of time to go back and forth on that, so we'll go back to that. I will know these are the two candidates in House District 17. If you're wondering, there is not a Republican who has filed in this seat, so these are the names that will appear on your ballot. Let's move over to House District 18. There are 3 candidates who have filed for this. We do have Steve Hohe, also a Libertarian. Did not get a notice that he was not going to be here, but so far has not showed up. So we'll move to Cindy Neighbor now and give her a chance to introduce herself in House District 18.
Thank you so much for coming out tonight. I have been in the House now. When I go back, will be my 8th term, which is my 15th and 16th year. I started in this process as a member of Shawnee Mission PTA and then as a school board member for 21 years. I've also served as the president for the Kansas Association of School Boards and served on many other committees that I've done. On the side, Board of Indigent Defense Services. I've been a member of the League of Women Voters. What I'm here tonight to do is to continue the work that we have done, what we have accomplished, funding for our schools, funding for special ed, mental health. And I'm ranking on the insurance committee, so I pay a lot of attention to the premiums and what you all get for your work, for your insurance coverage. Thank you so much.
We'll stay in House District 18, and the other candidate who is here is Robert Whitman. So Robert, we'll give you a chance to introduce yourself as well.
Thank you, Kyle. Greetings, my name is Robert Whitman. I am a nearly lifelong resident of Johnson County, and I'm running to provide better representation for people in the district, District 18, that is. The prosperity, safety, health of everyone in the district can be enhanced through certain legislation that the legislative action that the legislature can take, and I hope that we explore those items tonight, and through the questions I'm sure we will.
Well, let's dive right into those. The first question that I've been asking State House candidates is kind of an extension of your opening statements, gives you a chance maybe to expound on what you think might be your priorities, if elected or re-elected for a couple of you. But since we're holding forms for dozens of State House districts, priorities might shift or change from district to district. So I always have been starting these forms with this question: what do you see as the biggest priority or need in your particular district? Let's start in House District 17. The order falls to Michael Kerner to start this question. You'll each get 90 seconds for this one. Biggest priority or need for your district?
Well, at statewide level, obviously the biggest problem now is we're being taxed to death. So to finish what I was saying before, I couldn't finish. There's the rules about current revenue neutral rate. If a particular taxing authority wants because of inflation, if you leave the mill rate the same, then they get an automatic tax increase without doing anything. So the state said, no, you can't do that, you gotta hold a public hearing. Well, public hearings don't really change anything. They listen, they ignore, and they raise the rates. So I'm suggesting the change in the process, so you need a vote of the public inside that taxing district, whatever it is, city, county, or whatever, before you can exceed revenue neutral. Beyond that, I have to worry about things like medical freedom. I don't want anyone ever to be forced to take a vaccine, and I'm not just talking about COVID, I'm talking about childhood vaccines and everything else. The person or the parents decide the risk reward. The government does not get to ever make anything mandatory or make it a condition of going to school. I'll make that number one right now. All right, thank you.
Going over to House District 18, let's jump to Cindy Neighbor now. The biggest priority need that you see from residents in District 18.
One of the reasons I served on the Shawnee Mission School Board was to put us back in place with proper funding, rational funding. My top priority is going to be school funding, but beyond that, special education. We have not funded that for years. The federal government put a demand in place over 35 years ago. They said they would pay for about 40%. We in Shawnee Mission are about 17 or 18% right now, 35 years later. Education is our economic development for our future. These are our leaders for tomorrow. The second thing I would look at is to continue the tax relief that we did give this last year. Food tax will be totally gone in January. We raised the home value from $40,000 to $75,000 to be able to be written off on homes, which helps everybody. We gave a bigger child care tax credit, which is very important for working families. And we addressed the IDD, which is independent individuals with disabled development. I'm sorry, my tongue is tied. And but we increased that with 500 more beds this year. We still have a waiting list, and that's not good. But we are attempting to take care of that with the last tax relief. Thank you.
Staying in the House District 18 race, we'll go to Robert Whitman now. The biggest priority or need that you see for residents in this district?
Well, there are two that seem to get a lot of discussion at the door when I knock on doors and talk to residents in the district. One of them is the cost of living, and government has a big role to play in the cost of living through how it taxes people. The legislature had, I think, limited success in passing tax relief this past session. I think we should look for more ways to, we should explore more ways to cut taxes, whether they be income, sales, or any other taxes that the state levies. Also, public safety is a big issue too. We've had a lot of fentanyl deaths in the county these past couple of years, and we need to give law enforcement the tools they need to run these traffickers out of the state. They don't just traffic in drugs, they traffic in adults and children as well, and we need to make sure that they get the resources necessary to run these people out of Kansas.
Going back to the other side of the table and the District 17 race, Joella Hoye, biggest priority or need for residents in your district?
A big priority in House District 17 is public education. Parents want their children to have an excellent education and be safe while they're in their classrooms or their learning environments. And I think when you start, we're into the first quarter, and parents are thinking about class sizes, funding, special education resources, and how we're treating our educators. But they also started off by receiving emails and messages from both school districts in House District 17, DeSoto and Shawnee Mission, where there were other threats made over social media or other platforms in the wake of another national mass shooting in Georgia. So as we worked for fully funding special education and ensuring that our educators are equitably paid, I would like to see KPERS 3 move to KPERS 2 so that they can save for retirement, and also fight for policies that keep our kids and our educators safe in their school buildings.
Well, also we have another candidate that's come in. If you want to jump right in, I can give you the question, Steve. We can jump right to you too. I know you're just getting settled. I don't mean to ambush you here.
Sorry about that.
yeah, no problem. But we'll come back to, we'll allow you a chance to introduce yourself, and also the question was biggest priority or need for what you see for residents in District 18. So I'll give you maybe 90 seconds to both introduce yourself and maybe answer that question.
Hello, everybody.
And this is your microphone right here, so you can just turn it that way. Thank you.
Test. Okay, there we go. Hi, my name's Steve Hoye. That's Hohe. I'm running for the Kansas State Rep, District 18.
Yeah, and so then biggest priority for you in District 18, you think?
Well, my thing is just not only District 18, but the whole state of Kansas. I've got three. Basically, the budget, the spending, and a better form of taxation. That's one. The thing about it is the state's funding of education. I'd rather not be going through a program in which we just give the money out to the school districts and stuff. I think we should have our parents involved in a funding of their education. The parents involved with the students, and the funds move towards the students' goal of education and having a variety of them. And another thing is I'm also wanting to provide basically an affordable energy utility solution through legislation with independent companies that provide them. And in addition, allowing Kansas citizens to pursue safe energy alternatives towards energy independence, not having to be reliable on.
Well, thank you, Steve, and thank you for being here, and we'll get a chance to delve into some more of those issues as well. I'll let you catch your breath. And we'll go, we'll start the next question with Cindy Neighbor. And if you want to move the microphone back your way. At least, all of you, I think, at least in some way mentioned taxes as a priority, so that's where we'll jump first. Of course, earlier this summer, lawmakers did pass, and Kansas Governor Laura Kelly signed into law a tax cut package that slashes roughly $2.4 billion in property and income taxes over the next 3 years. Also pares down the tax brackets from 3 to 2 and eliminates the state tax on Social Security benefits, among other things. Still, taxes, as you all noted, is a main most asked about question from our readers, as well as probably what you hear from voters when you go door to door. So the question is, starting with Cindy Neighbor, are there any other tax cuts, tax relief policies that you'd like to see the legislature pursue next year? Is there anything in particular that the state can do regarding local property taxes? And so we'll start with Cindy Neighbor, and each of you will get 60 seconds for this question.
Taxes are always going to be an issue. As far as local property taxes, those are established here in our county. It's not by the state. So we need to realize that. Our local property taxes take in snow removal, transportation, road repair, everything that takes place that gives us services. That is what we pay our local tax for. As far as the budget is concerned for this year, I know there is a proposal now that is put out that they are going to start working on the budget earlier.
Speak to the microphone.
As late and could be starting in December, November or December, so that it has more input. I hope a lot of that input is talked about in the general public and not just by 6 people.
Staying in District 18, Robert Whitman, any other tax cuts, tax relief policies you'd like to see the legislature pursue next year, in particular regarding residential property taxes?
Perhaps not in particular, but with regard to property taxes, the state does levy a property tax along with all the local jurisdictions in the county and in your city. Somebody brought up the issue of revenue neutral votes that cities and property tax entities have to go through. It actually can be done because revenue neutral is not the most unpopular thing in the world, because Wyandotte County successfully, or voted to, the Wyandotte County Unified Government successfully cap property taxes at the insistence of their citizens. Apparently, the citizens of Wyandotte County have been advocating for that for a long time, and it can be done. It's just up to the will of taxing entities to do so.
Going back to District 17, on the other end of the table, Joella Hoye, tax cuts, tax relief policies you'd like to see the legislature pursue next year off of the bill or the law that went into effect this year, in particular anything the state can do regarding local property taxes.
Well, I did vote to support the big bipartisan tax relief plan. We also got the food sales tax that'll go down to 0 in January. So that is a significant plan to get tax cuts through the Kansas legislature and signed by the governor. Saving money for hardworking Kansans doesn't all have to be through tax cuts, but things I would like to take a look at, should we be able to keep our budget moving forward, is a cuts for period products and diapers, as well as a 3-day back-to-school sales tax holiday, and the Veterans Valor Property Tax Relief Program. It's about $8 million a year. I would also, we hear a lot about the cost of cereal and eggs. Let's feed kids breakfast at school. Let's give them free meals. That's a way to save money for families as well. I absolutely support those programming, and I would say though, it's gonna the bottom line matters here. Kansans want to save, but they don't want to go back to the years of underfunded schools and cut infrastructure projects.
Staying in District 18, Michael Kerner, this question to you. You already mentioned it quite a bit in your opening statement, in your priorities. You can expound on it a little bit more if you want for 60 seconds. Any tax cuts, tax relief policies you'd like to pursue?
Thank you. District 17, by the way.
District 17, sorry, my bad.
Yes, I already started talking about it. It is a matter of the state. The state made a rule that said for revenue neutral, you have to have a public hearing. Well, the state can change that rule and say for to exceed revenue neutral, you have to have a public vote. And that's what I was talking about. So it's not just a local matter, it is a state matter. I'm certainly in favor of any income tax cuts, and if you could do any more, I want more. I'll look for everything I can. Personally, I was very overjoyed with Social Security not being state taxable, but it's still federally taxable, so. But I would urge everyone to if I don't win or whoever does win, go press your state legislature to make sure revenue neutral rates require a public vote, because public hearings can just be, they listen, they ignore. Doesn't do you any good. Thank you.
And rounding out this question, we're back in District 18 and see Hohe, the Libertarian candidate in this district. Any other tax cuts or tax relief policies you'd like to see the legislature pursue? Anything the state can do about residential property taxes?
First off, as far as residential property tax, that's through the county and local. I mean, there's the statute 12, I think it's statute 12, section 5 or anything. Basically, we're not supposed to mess with it. That's their thing. That's how they get their revenues. But coming back to the taxes of the state of Kansas, I mean, for a year, they were pursuing a flat tax system of 5.5%, and also not having to tax Social Security and other things. I mean, that would be the way to go. I mean, the 2-tier, 3-tier, we're talking dividing people up into rich, poor, middle class, and stuff like that. Why don't we just have one tax for everybody, 5.5, that was, I think, what they were doing, and just go for it. It's $5.5 per dollar, so it's 5.5 cents per dollar on taxes. And then the thing is that we really need to be very, we don't need to be spending like crazy. We need to reduce spending cuts. We need to make sure that anything that we do is not of a critical matter of spending.
Well, that's a good segue into the next question that we got from the audience, and this one will start with Robert Whitman, still in District 18. Each of you will get 60 seconds to respond to this. A follow-up tax question from the audience: are you willing to trim any specific things from the budget to accomplish lowering taxes, or will you just move the tax burden around to other sources? So this is a question from the audience. We'll start with Robert Whitman first, this idea of having to maybe make cuts or specific parts of the budget you would target if you're going to lower taxes more.
I think that every part of the budget deserves scrutiny every legislative session, and we need to make evaluations as to what we should spend as far as certain programs that are not necessarily the core functions of government, such as highway and roads and bridges and things like that. Things that people can't do on their own. So I don't have any particular thing. I just think that the whole spending component of the state budget needs to be examined year after year.
Going back to District 17 on the other end of the table, Joella Hoye, any places you're willing to trim, specific things from the budget you're willing to trim in order to accomplish lowering taxes?
I think just off the top of my head, there's one thing that we could do to get another $62 million into the state general fund, which is expand Medicaid, in order to, we had to actually take that money out because we rejected Medicaid expansion again. Also, creating a new revenue through medical cannabis. If we were able to pass that, we could structure it in a way where we could bring some more revenue into the state. Each year there are some budget provisos that get put in through various budget committees and on the floor, and then through the conference committee process. They can be what are sometimes called pet projects. So I do think there is some opportunity to trim, but each of us goes there and wants to fight for our district. So I would never want to eliminate that public process and ability to advocate for our folks. But when it comes down to it, each of us represents one district across the whole entire state. So we do need to keep the entire state of Kansas in mind.
Staying in District 17, Michael Kerner, any places you'd be willing to look to trim any specific things from the budget in order to accomplish lowering taxes?
Okay, I'm going to impinge on the education question to answer this. I advocate for if you're giving people the option to remove their children and the related money through vouchers, tuition tax credits, any of several possibilities to give parents the option of removing their children and the money and send them off and get them out of the public school system. Right now, the public school system is spending state average over $17,000 per year per kid. If you can give parents 75% of that money in a voucher, they'll go off happily, being able to buy a nice, very good private education, and the state will save a bunch of money.
Transitioning over to District 18, Steve Hohe, the same question to you. Any places you'd be willing to specifically trim or look at the budget more closely if you're going to lower taxes?
Well, I mean, first off, you gotta look at the budget. I mean, it's not here right in front of us for 2025. I mean, I've seen some of these things, just, briefing right over it. I mean, you'd almost have to go through line by line and look at every one of the spending things that we have to do. I mean, we have to look at what are the necessary things. What is the things that Kansas can't do by themselves? Things that are going to be for all of Kansas, not just certain people and certain things. I mean, this is why we're having to really look and focus at the budget, And Mike Kerner right there, he really hit it on the nail. I mean, we could save a lot of money on the way we do with vouchers and stuff for schools. I mean, we should start promoting homeschooling, microschooling. Even allowing parents to divvy up and go for a private school if it costs more than what the state of Kansas does. I mean, we could save money, because I hate to say this, but our public education system is nothing but a proverbial hole in the ground, and we just dump money into it.
And finally, wrapping up this question to Cindy Neighbor, thank you for switching the microphone over. District 18 still, are you willing to trim any specific things from the budget in order to accomplish lowering taxes if that's your aim?
I agree with Representative Hoye. Medicaid expansion we have worked on for years. We have more than 150,000 people that are uninsured. Those people need good health care and we need to make that possible. Second of all, if you ever look at the exemptions that we provide through the budget, there are it's millions of dollars. Some of them are for dog shows, some of them are for cigar fundraising and things like that. Those are not necessities. I think we can find some money there, and we can put that into something that is worthwhile, like education, healthcare, mental health. And so exemptions would be one of the things. And finally, we cannot do away with our safety programs in our cities, our states, and our communities. This is imperative. Thank you.
The next issue we'll ask about is education, and a couple of you have already talked about it at length. I was going to ask about school vouchers. I think we know what a couple people think about vouchers up here, but you can expand on that. But maybe I'll broaden the question just to ask you, what do you think are the biggest challenges, if any, facing public education, and how would you approach that if elected or re-elected? And this goes to Joella Hoye first in District 17. So the biggest challenges facing public education, and how would you approach that if elected, or in your case, re-elected? 60 seconds.
Well, I definitely think that we've seen surveys across Kansas, and teachers and educators don't feel supported by the way that we're talking about education right now. In Johnson County, we have amazing public schools. Kansas has great schools. And do we have issues with our standardized tests? Yeah, kids don't always knock it out of the park, but that cannot be the only thing that we look at to decide whether a student is achieving or doing a good job. I mentioned earlier, I think we need to address Capers 3 for our public employees. I think that we'll be able to attract and retain a great education workforce if we do that. And I want to make it very clear, since I didn't say this earlier, I think public funding should go to public schools, and I do not support vouchers. I am very relieved that we've been able to stop the mega voucher bills each year that they've come before us in the legislature. In my first term, I was on K-12 education budget, and I am very concerned nationally about the prospect of losing the Department of Education. So I'm a very firm public ed supporter.
Staying in District 17, Michael Kerner, biggest challenges, if any, that you see facing public education?
Well, my personal experience is I have a grandson who's in middle school, and he ran into an awful lot of trouble with bullies, right? Matter of fact, it ended up having to get transferred to another school to get away from them. So is inherent danger in throwing, especially at middle school ages, of throwing kids together in a large school. I don't remember it being like that when I was that age group, but maybe it's just a fuzzy memory. But getting back, yes, I would advocate for vouchers or any other options you can think of where parents get the option to remove their children from the school, take 75% of the money we're spending and give it to them, and let them go away happy. And if schools tend to empty out, so be it. The parents chose that.
Transitioning over to District 18, and we'll start with Steve Hoye, this question about education. What, if any, challenges do you see facing Kansas public schools, and how would you approach that if elected? And you can switch the microphone just so we can hear you.
Got it. Anyway, listen, the education system that we've had, I've had two boys that just recently, one just graduated, the other one went 2 years ago. He went through this COVID thing. I mean, I'm going to tell you something straight up. I know there's some people who are going to really hate me about this, but public school system, they're more into indoctrination than education, okay? I mean, they're just damn out of hand, okay? I went through and I've seen this magazine from Shawnee Mission School District. They are so top heavy in their employment. You know that the Shawnee Mission School District has one superintendent, 3 assistant superintendents, and then when you go down to the Northwest High School, they have a combination of 5 principals and vice principals. They are so top heavy in employment and stuff. And the thing is, we don't really teach kids to go through 2 paths. There should be 2 paths. Some will go to college that are intelligent enough to it, and then there'll be some that goes to blue collar work, like doing tech schools and stuff. But the thing is, we need to teach these kids to come back to Kansas and work in Kansas and take care of the older people.
And stay in District 18 and switch the microphone over. Thank you, Cindy. The question to you, biggest challenges you see facing public schools in Kansas, if in your case re-elected, how would you approach that?
Well, one thing I'm going to refute here is that administration is top heavy. It's 1% of the budget. And there are associate superintendents, and each one of them covers a different area. Curriculum, safety, HR, all of those have a position, and they're working 50 and 60 hours a week. They're not top heavy. I am not for vouchers, and I'm not for tax credits. I am very concerned about safety, whether it be the threat of guns or whether it be people making threats to teachers. That is hate, and we do not need hate in our schools. It doesn't help our students, it doesn't help our communities, and it certainly doesn't help us. We need safety first.
Before we get to Rob, I see that Steve wants to respond, and
Well,
you shuffled your papers, and yeah, I'll give you a chance, 30 seconds to
come-
respond. I will just say, we're not gonna get into a back and forth about
No, and we're not gonna get into back
administration
and
at
forth
Shawnee
thing.
Mission School District,
But
but
the
yeah.
one thing the thing is about empowering parents and bringing the kids into these schools, this is where they're actually seeing the money. They're actually taking their kid and sending them to school. I mean, they ought to be, proper rearing of their children, so when they go into that school, they are going there to be educated, not indoctrinated, and they're there to do work. And the thing about it is putting the kids that are intelligent enough that want to go college bound to teach them and get them ready. And then the people who are wanting to do blue collar, we should get them into tech schools.
Okay, thank you. Robert Whitman, the question to you now. What do you see as the biggest challenges facing Kansas public schools if you're elected, and how would you approach it?
Well, one of the things that bothers me is, public schools should be funded by the public, and what we need is to make sure that that we have achievement to show for it from our students. Achievement seems to be slowly eroding in our public schools. Also, what are our students being taught? I don't want to knock on another door and talk to a parent whose middle school student got bullied because of what they've been taught in high school, or in school that day. That perhaps maybe they're the oppressor, or maybe even the victim of just because of the way they look. That just breaks my heart. And there's a whole lot more I could say on education. I see the time has expired, though.
Moving on to a different topic, it does come from the audience. It's framed in a little bit of a different way, but we might have to modify the question just based on what I suspect you would answer. This questioner does want to ask about Medicaid expansion, but I would imagine that there's people at the table who don't support it. So if you don't support it, please explain why. But if you do support it, the questioner asks, because this has come up year after year and it doesn't go anywhere, is there anything practical that can be done to, as this person puts it, force legislative leadership to allow a floor vote on Medicaid expansion? So it's kind of a two-pronged question depending on how you feel about Medicaid expansion. If you don't support it, why not? If you do, is there any practical solution to pushing the issue forward based on this reader's question? And we'll start with Michael Kerner in District 17, 60 seconds.
Well, I'm not in favor of expanding Medicaid. It's a burden on taxpayers, because remember, we're both state and federal taxpayers, so if you can't tell me that, the state's giving back money to the federal government, we're both kind of taxpayers. said that, but as I said, you can, if you wanna contribute to other people's medical care, we can set up charities and you can contribute your own money, but you can't force us to do it.
Going to District 18, and Steve Hoye, the same question to you about Medicaid expansion.
Well, let's look at it this way. There's not enough time to talk about it. I mean, there's the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. I mean, if you, this is a very long subject, and this needs more time than just 60 seconds. But first off, I'm not for the idea. I think that Medicaid should be the final answer to somebody's healthcare needs. I mean, we do have to exhaust every possible thing. I mean, I'm gonna hate to say this, Kyle, but I've seen 150,000, 263,000 people without healthcare. You know, people, I gotta understand something. There are people out there who don't really believe in having healthcare. I mean, it's unfortunate, but there are those people who are really dire need of healthcare. But I will say one thing. I don't want it to be, I hate to say this, and it's gonna get people upset. I just don't want it to be used for elective surgeries or elective things that do not have anything to do to the health of a person. And I'd like to expand on that too.
Staying in District 18 and switching the microphone over to Cindy Neighbor, your thoughts on Medicaid expansion. I suspect you support it, so the question would be, would there be any practical solution to forcing a vote on it? Because really it comes up every year and it really doesn't go anywhere. So what's the practical, what's the reason for continuing to push for it when we know, or we suspect maybe it won't go anywhere?
It passed in the House already, and it died in the Senate. It's based on leadership and majority rule in both the House and the Senate. If we have more people who will support Medicaid expansion, we can get it passed. But it's all going to come down to elections. And those people that want to do it, do your homework. Find out who wants Medicaid expansion, who's going to support the governor. If they don't, we will fight for it again another year.
Staying in District 18, Robert Whitman, your thoughts on Medicaid expansion.
Well, through lowering of waiting lists for Medicaid patients and increased reimbursement of doctors who provide Medicaid services, we can at least serve more people that way. Health insurance is not the same as health care, and we need to figure out how to get health care for everyone, not just health insurance. Doctors provide health care, insurance doesn't, so, but it does help pay the cost if we can get enough doctors who actually see Medicaid patients.
Going over to Joella Hoye in District 17 to round out this question, Medicaid expansion to you.
Yeah, I vote in support of Medicaid expansion. There have been some things done procedurally to try to get a vote to the floor in the House, and that has unfortunately not been successful yet to get it to the governor's desk and get it signed. But I think since 40 states have expanded Medicaid, why is Kansas holding out? It's very hard for me to find an answer to that. Each year in the interim that I've been elected, we've gone with the Kansas Hospital Association. We've heard from hospitals, healthcare professionals, chambers of commerce. Over and over again, we as legislators, in a bipartisan manner, hear how important this is to the state. And I don't know about you all, but yeah, we are paying into the federal government that is going to other states, and I'm not getting refunded for that. So I'd like to bring it back to help our state budget, and not only just because it's good business and good for the workforce, it's good for a healthy Kansas. Individuals that need health care that fall in that gap are at risk without Medicaid expansion.
We have a couple of questions from the audience regarding guns. You can tell by the way they're worded that we have people in the audience who feel differently about this issue. We have one person ask, how will you promote and work to pass what this questioner calls gun sense legislation, such as secure firearm storage and red flag laws? We have another questioner asks, do gun-free zones encourage violence? Because people with guns or killers know the staff cannot defend themselves or their students. So we have people on different sides of this, and so maybe it would be illustrative to hear your thoughts on gun legislation, gun control, if you want to call it that. And it starts with Steve Hoye in District 18, if you want to move the microphone.
Oh, Lord. Okay, listen, let's get the facts, okay? Second Amendment rights, right to bear arms, right? Understand one thing. People, guns don't kill people. People kill people. People will kill one way or another. You take the guns away from them, they're gonna come at each other with knives, or take the knives away from them, they're gonna come at each other with sticks and rocks. Let's just see that the way it is. I mean, when you start to create a defenseless society where they cannot protect themselves in their own homes, then yeah, I mean, that's what you're gonna get. You're gonna get a defenseless society. And that's where sometimes you'll have these autocratic, or not autocratic, but authoritarian people coming in who have the power. My father lived through that and was basically World War II in Germany. I'm gonna tell you something, this is not the thing to do, but there is one thing is, you need to have gun safety. We need to promote gun safety. We should have gun safety classes for anybody who has a firearm in Kansas.
Staying in District 18, Cindy Neighbor, the question about guns to you. Again, we've heard contrasting views from the audience. Where do you stand? One questioner mentions specific legislation they'd like to see. What would you do re-elected in your case?
We have guns in our house, but they're also locked up. And they're there to go hunting. They're not there to go out and shoot up schools, businesses, people shopping, and create anxiety on whether you're safe to go to a concert. Guns need to be in the hands of people that are trained. I believe in a training program. That training program is not through our public schools, because a program has to be chosen, and everybody has a different view of what program is satisfactory. Guns do not need to be in our classroom. Teachers do not need to be armed. Our teachers are there to keep our children safe and to teach, not to shoot somebody. So I'm in favor of red flag laws. I'm also in favor of, I'm not against.
Finish the thought.
Okay. I am not against people owning guns. I think there is a reason, and you protect your family.
Staying in District 18, Robert Whitman, your stance on the gun issue, specific policies that you would or would not support, your chance to explain.
We do have a Second Amendment in this country, and it applies to people in Kansas as well. Responsible gun owners are not a threat to anybody. We need to promote responsible gun ownership. I know people who range from unarmed in their homes to 7-foot gun safes full of ammunition and arms. People need to determine what level of security they require in their home. People just don't, a responsible gun owner just won't do any of the things that we read about in the news that are due to irresponsible use of firearms, both by taking them anywhere and by using them for various reasons, for criminal reasons.
Going to District 17, Joella Hoye, your stance on gun issues, any specific legislation you would or would not support, thoughts also about some audience members also expressing just a desire to protect the Second Amendment as well, so explain balancing that too.
In Kansas, we've really been more on the defense against weakening our gun laws. So I would like to pass some sensible gun legislation, and I would look specifically at secure storage. Because today I was reading the Child Death Review Board annual report, and when you look at the number of homicides, and again, for kids age 1 to 17 in our state, 16% of those homicides were the result of an unintentional shooting, where someone's showing the kid a gun. 60% of firearm-related suicides, the owner was the parent or caregiver. 81% of those firearms were not stored in a locked location, and 50% of those were loaded. In the last 5 years of the report, 2018 to 2022, there were 154 firearm deaths of kids ages 1 to 17. 47% were homicides, 45% suicides. Overall, of all of those deaths, only 7% of firearms were securely locked. And of all firearm deaths, 52% of those firearms were of caregivers. So I think we can change our gun culture, our behavior, by having secure storage so that kids don't have unsupervised access to guns.
And rounding out this question, staying in District 17, Michael Kerner, your thoughts on guns, any specific legislation you would or would not support, your philosophy in general? Approach the question as you may.
All right. As I already said before, I'm vehemently opposed to anything that even looks like gun control. I red flag laws or anything else. Yes, gun-free zones do encourage trouble and do encourage shootings. Nobody's gonna go walk into a place where he's very likely to be shot back at and start shooting around. Doesn't work. But you give him a gun-free zone, he says, oh, okay, if it's open season, I can do whatever I want for about 10 minutes till the police get there. And I can make make a name. We find out a lot of the school shooters that of recent years have been under the influence of SSRIs. They've been, they have mental health problems and they were taking SSRIs. And I think we need to start to look into that issue and whether we should be using those at all. Let's see, as far as, I think teachers should be allowed to be armed, not forced to be, but allowed to be if they wish to, with appropriate storage in the classroom. We can have locked storage in a classroom too, right? All right, thank you.
We have time for 2 more questions before we get to the next forum, and so we do have one question from the audience about elections. Before that, I'm going to ask a question that we of via email when we asked readers to ask us what they wanted to ask State House candidates about, and it is about abortion. Of course, 2 years ago, Kansas voters rejected a proposed amendment that would have explicitly stripped the right to abortion from the state constitution. Abortion measures still have been debated the last 2 years in the Kansas State House. Lawmakers have debated dozens of bills seeking in some way to either limit or impact abortion procedures in Kansas. It's widely expected that such measures will continue to come up next year. Do you support any new restrictions on abortion or laws in any way governing the procedure? This one starts with Cindy Neighbor. 60 seconds, why or why not?
I don't support any new legislation on abortion. It is our right as individuals to meet with our doctor, our husbands, our spouses, our mates, and make those kinds of decisions. They are not easy. They are very hard. And we have people that have died in parking lots today because of the states that have such strict laws. I don't want to lose a friend or a neighbor or a relative to that kind of lack of care. And I think it is strategic that we continue to support the August 22 election that set those rules straight. In fact, we've also, it's also been found that many of the laws that have tried to be passed are in court because they're illegal. They are simply against the law. Why pass things that are against the law?
Staying in District 18, Robert Whitman, your response to this question: do you support any new restrictions on abortion, any laws in any way governing the procedure? Why or why not?
For right now, the abortion question is fairly settled. It's been settled by Value Them Both, and the courts have ruled that any pro-life initiatives that are passed by the legislature are probably not going to pass their muster. That being said, I am pro-life, and I would support any and all pro-life legislation that comes across that comes to a vote in the legislature that protects, that doesn't allow abortion except for the life of the mother, except for saving the life of the mother, that is.
Going down to the end of the table, District 17, Joella Hoye, do you support any new restrictions on abortion, any laws that govern the procedure? Why or why not?
I wish I could agree that our overwhelming vote to protect our constitutional rights in Kansas are settled matter, but without Roe v. Wade to protect us, it's just not the case. It is left to the states, and we still see anti-abortion groups trying to chip away at our rights and try to criminalize women and doctors. So it is important, if reproductive rights are a main issue to you, you've got to prioritize it this election, because states with extreme restrictions on abortion have left women alone in parking lots, hospital bathrooms, in danger. Also, some have died. So this is definitely a life or death matter, and I know Kansans aren't going to let that happen here. We're going to protect that right in our state. So please vote to protect reproductive rights, including contraception and IVF treatment.
Staying in District 17, Michael Kerner, your thoughts on abortion?
I'm personally pro-life. but I understand how the people voted, and we're gonna have to live by that for now. There's nothing to be done about it, but we can ensure that the state doesn't pay via Medicaid for abortions unless the life of the mother is at stake. I don't wanna have to be paying for hired killers. That's my position on that. All right?
And rounding out this question, back in District 18, Steve Hoye.
Okay, August 8th, 2022, the primary. The people had spoken. The vote was being done by the people. They seen what it was there before them. They chose. The value them both went down. It's done. Okay. Now we're gonna go forth and navigate this. Okay. And for all we know, years from now we're gonna change our minds and go to something different. But I really think that it was a blessings to allow the people to eliminate Roe v. Wade and give it to each state to decide how they want their abortion, if they want abortion or not. Now we just have to go and navigate. From here on out, it's going to be between a doctor and a woman on the idea of these certain procedures. And I'm just going to say one thing. And you're going to hate me about this, but I really think when you say abortion, elective abortion, you call it reproductive health. I call it deproductive, okay? I mean, this is an elective thing. Now, when the mothers...
Finish the thought.
Yeah, the thing is, I mean, we're here standing at a precipice, and we're sitting here making these words and being this word salad, reproductive health and all this stuff. I mean, come on. Let's
Okay,
just
one
look
more
at it.
question in before 6 o'clock, before we move on to the next forum. But we're going to start with Robert Whitman, I believe, is where the order falls in District 18. And this is the last question. We're going to forego closing statements just because of the time. So this will be the final question. It comes from the audience. Do you think our elections in Kansas are secure? And what steps, if any, would you take in the future to continue to keep them secure? So really wanting to ask about election security. Others call it election integrity, but hear your views on that. Robert Whitman, 60 seconds.
Well, the biggest problem with our elections right now is transparency. I mean, we vote, most people vote by machine, use a machine to mark their ballot and have their ballot tabulated. There are possible problems with that. I personally get a paper ballot and have it hand counted, and I would recommend that for everyone. Although you can think of ways to cheat on any type of election system that you come up with, I just think the paper trail provided by paper ballots is the best. Election security, it's fairly good here in Kansas, and I think we should allow people to question this or that election security measure without the fear of being labeled as some sort of election denier. I don't think people deny elections in this state.
Going to District 17, Joella Hoye, down at the other end of the table. Do you think our elections in Kansas are secure? What steps would you take in the future to continue to keep them secure?
Yeah, our elections in Kansas are secure. Our Secretary of State is doing a good job, and his staff often comes in and testifies in some of our committees about the security of our elections. We have had some bills come up that I did not support because I felt it got in the way of people being able to cast their vote. I don't want to put any more restrictions on people being able to have their vote counted. And if you vote here in Johnson County and you vote on the machine, it does print out a paper ballot that you can look at with your very own eyes. And I think I encourage you to look it over and see if that's what the button you pushed showed up there. I am very concerned that there are nationwide leaders who are still casting doubt on the 2020 election. Joe Biden won fair and square, and I hope that all the Kansas leaders will be respectful as we were last time to avoid any sort of violence as it relates to our elections, because that's just not something that fits here in Kansas or in our country.
Staying in District 17, Michael Kerner, the question to you about election security. Do you think elections are secure? How would you approach that issue if elected?
Our current system, the way at least this county operates, seems okay, except for the mail-in ballots. I would eliminate no excuse mail-in ballots. It should only be for disabled people. once you have no-excuse mail-in ballots, it's just an opening for fraud. Most of Europe eliminated mail-in ballots just for that reason. It just became too easy to cheat. That's the question you answered. 2020 election, was that good? I think that there was one very major problem with the 2020 election, and that was the way the Hunter Biden laptop was treated, completely buried with censorship. Nobody knew anything about it until after the election. Oh, it was Russian disinformation, forget about that. Well, it wasn't. And it had evidence of fraud from both Hunter and his dad. And that very well might have swung the election. Can't tell that for sure, but that should never have happened, and that's a good example of the danger of censorship. Okay?
District 18, Steve Hohe, the question about election security. Do you think elections in Kansas are secure? Would you do anything to make them more secure in the future?
Well, first off, I'm with Robert here about the idea of paper ballot. The Dominion machines, I question the thing about the Dominion machines. They're electronic, and when you say, what was your name, Hoya? When she says that you get a paper, well, you get the paper, then you have to put it back into the thing. What's getting printed out and what goes into the machine may be two different things. I would say one thing: if I was going to vote that Dominion machine, and that thing comes out, I want to keep it. And if there is any kind of thing, there's some distrust to the system, then we can deal with it. Now, as far as mail-in ballots, let me ask you something, folks. Which one would you, if you have $5,000 and $100 bills and you put it in an envelope and you put it into a mailbox, or you have an ATM, which one would you think you would have more security with as far as getting some kind of documentation? That's my thing about it, is that the thing is when you have it ballot things, it becomes a sense of fraud. And we also need to start looking at the voter rolls and see if they've been properly audited.
And rounding out this question, actually getting the final response before we end this forum, Cindy Neighbor, the idea of election security. Do you think elections in Kansas are secure? Would you want to do anything else to make them more secure?
I actually sit on the elections committee, and we had several bills this year that addressed issues that have come about through false statements. We have a very, very secure election system in Kansas. I've been to at least 3 large election offices and have seen the process in each one. I would encourage each one of you, if you have a question, take the time to go look, ask questions, and see how secure it is. Paper ballots, let's look at the mail system, folks. We don't get our mail on time. Sometimes we don't get mail at all for days. We have a problem with mail. And those mail-in ballots this last election, they had to get rid of, 1,000 ballots because they were postmarked. That's the law. So there are some things, I think, within the system that need to be corrected, but it's not in the election office itself.
Well, thank you so much for the candidates for your participation in tonight's forum. I'd also like to thank Post staffers once again for their behind-the-scenes support of this forum. For those in the crowd, give them a round of applause for showing up and participating. We're going to hustle to the next forum, so just a couple of reminders for those of you watching online. The deadline to register to vote is Tuesday, October 15th. Early voting starts Saturday, October 19th, and of course, Election Day itself is November 5th. Thank you so much for watching this forum, and you can go to johnsoncountypost.com for more election coverage.
Robert, thank you.
Thank you. Good stuff.
Why we only? Yeah, we'll try our best. Sorry about being late. Thanks so much.
No, I wanted to give you a good introduction.
You just mixed
Cindy, you spoke about women's rights. You're a big supporter of women's rights to control their health, their health care. Is that all women? I mean,
What do you mean by all women?
well, do you support the right of women in the womb to be born?
There are times that,
Good idea.
I'm going to leave that question. I'm not in favor. I think the life and health.
Thank you for being here. I appreciate
Thank you.
it. Thank you so
I
much.
think the life and health of the mother.
It's very
and
important. I
incest
don't deny that.
And rape. Those are two horrible things.
What about-
And if you haven't gone through it, then you don't understand. And
The life of
I'm
the
not-
fetus, is that important to you?
of course it is.
Okay. I'm
It
good to
always
hear
is.
that.
It always is. My daughter's an OBGYN.
And if we
Thank you.
need to, we can open the
I
glass.
know you, but I don't remember from where.
I've met you before. Billy Crone, probably.
Oh,
Matthew
yeah,
Clark.
okay, yeah. You helped me do some
Good debate up there. You did good.
I'm not.
I hope
I'm
you get
getting
it.
positive feedback
You're
from
not
you.
able to get in there if you need in there.
So I've been coming to these and trying to talk to candidates. And
Are you not gonna hear your questions back?
what do you guys prefer? I mean, like, I don't want to waste your time walking them back and forth.
Questions back. Kyle was letting.
I try to not send them in unless it's a topic that they've started to talk about. Doing well. I can hold it up when one of them comes up when it becomes relevant. But I try to save them until one of the candidates says something in their intro remarks about something that I had commented on. Yeah.
Everybody.
Thank you.
That was the mission of the community college. You start for questions. Okay. I don't know. You guys played. Did that one guy that kept saying you could hit me with we had a little photo shoot in the house. Didn't we? Oh, yes.
One thing I wanted to comment about, I like a lot of the stuff that you said up there.
Yeah.
Our rights don't come from the Second Amendment. Our rights to self-defense come from our Creator, from our existence, from our humanity.
Well,
the Second Amendment is, and the Fourth Amendment in Kansas are government restrictions to keep the government from wasting our tax money infringing on those rights.
I mean, you're 100% right.
There's people that disagree with me in this room, I'm sure, but
no, you're absolutely right. Our rights do come from the Constitution was God inspired for sure, and you just don't have enough time to expound on that.
It's the Fourth in Kansas.
The Fourth
Amendment to the state Constitution. If you ever debate it with one of them again, ask them what the Fourth Amendment of Kansas says, and let them reveal they haven't read the Constitution.
Well, I was talking about the Second Amendment in the federal Constitution that also applies in Kansas.
It does. But the Kansas Fourth Amendment is actually more inclusive and more encompassing of that human right.
You know what?
It has better things to say. So
I should examine that.
Yes, you should. Everyone up there should.
Yes, I should.
Have a nice one. I'm going to get ready for the next. Robert, thank you.
Yeah.
See, when I worked as a floorman, the TV station, it was 1 minute, 30 seconds, 15, and 5 on.
I'll be floating around, so you'll have to kind of like for me.
Okay, the yellow is what then?
Yellow is 30 seconds, red is time's up.
Okay, we don't get a 15. Oh, all right. We'll do this. Thank you, ma'am.
All right. Where's Is the camera angle on? Is it on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Are you ready? Okay, we're going now.
All right, good evening and welcome to this candidate forum hosted by the Johnson County Post, featuring candidates vying for two Kansas House districts in northwestern Johnson County. This is House District 39 to your left and House District 117 to the right. We'll give the candidates a chance to introduce themselves shortly. This is the second of 3 scheduled forums we're hosting this evening at Monticello Library in Shawnee. I apologize. I was at Miriam Tuesday night. All 3 of the forums we do tonight are being live streamed into separate videos. Of each forum will be put on the Post Facebook page where voters can view them at any point between now and November 5th. We want to thank the Johnson County Library for allowing the use of this space tonight. We want to thank the candidates for their participation, of course. We want to also thank those of you in attendance or watching online. We want to thank the Royals for winning yesterday, so there's no conflict. We can all agree to that. I finally want to thank our subscribers as well. It's your support that allows us to put on events like this and cover local elections every year like no other local news outlet does. With all that being said, again, this is the second of 3, so we're going to dive right in. The candidates know the format. If you were here for the first forum, you also know the format, but you'll quickly pick it up. And so we'll start with opening statements, and the luck of the draw fell to Vanessa Vaughn West to begin opening statements. And so we'll start in District 39 with Vanessa. 1 minute each for opening statements, and Vanessa, you can start.
Excellent. Good evening, everyone. I'm Vanessa Vaughn West, and I am running to be the representative from District 39, which essentially covers Shawnee and Lake Quivira. So I want to begin tonight by just sharing a little bit about myself. So I am not a career politician. I'm a mom, and I'm an executive, and I'm really coming from a working class family. I grew up in an apartment, and so I know firsthand what it's like to struggle and the power of hard work to create opportunities. I've spent my career working in a variety of different sectors, also including local government, as well as not-for-profit leadership, working in banking, and now working in the legal field. And the through line of all of those is that I've been a person to build collaborative engagement, to build consensus, and to be able to get problems solved. Those are what I like to call easily transferable skills that will serve me well in the legislature. I'm committed to increasing, expanding Medicaid, to funding our schools, to also being able to protect women's rights, and also supporting affordable housing and many, many other things, including lowering taxes that we'll get to later tonight. So thank you for the opportunity to be here.
And we'll circle back around to Angela Stiens in a bit, but we'll jump over to House District 117 first, and Bill Hammond, give you a chance to introduce yourself, Bill.
My name is Bill
Maybe just
Hammond.
scoot just a little bit closer to the microphone.
Closer?
first, yeah.
Okay, we're gonna get this
Yeah.
right one way or the other.
That's good.
You know, I actually used to be a stagehand with Local 43 in St. Joe, and getting mics in front of people is a big issue, getting them in the right place. My name's Bill Hammond. I'm running for the 117th House District. Probably three issues that, oh, by the way, thank you for hosting this, thank the library, and thank you all for coming. Thank you for your interest, because without your interest, elections don't happen the way they should. I am very concerned about women's rights. There's been a whole lot of things across the country. I think we need to be very careful about that. And I bluntly think we ought to let women make their own decision, and us men ought to keep ourselves out of it. I believe in affordable health care for all. And I have served on a federally qualified health center, also on Oral Health Kansas. I hope I get a chance to talk about that a little bit more later. And I'm strong on public education. I served on Schools for Fair Funding for a long time. And it took us 10 years to get constitutional funding for our kids. That's up for renewal in the election. I don't want to lose it. That's why I'm running.
Thank you to Bill. Also in this race is Adam Turk. He's the incumbent Republican representative in House District 117. Was not able to make it tonight. He is the father of some young children and had a family conflict, so he could not be here tonight. I will also say District 117, about half of it's in Johnson County, half of it's in Douglas County, but it covers portions of DeSoto, Lenexa, Olathe, and Shawnee. Let's go back to District 39 and give Angela Stiens a chance to introduce herself at the end of the table.
Yes, well,
There
thank
you go.
you.
Yep.
Thank you to the Johnson County Post and the Monticello Library for hosting tonight. Well, good evening. My name is Angela Stiens. I'm currently the representative for District 39. I was sworn back into the legislature back in March when Owen Donahoe, who previously held this seat, retired. My husband Shannon is here tonight. We have been married for 32 years. We have lived in Shawnee for 26 years in the same house, if you can believe that. We have 5 children who have all attended the area schools here. We also have 3 grandchildren whose future I'm also very invested in and care very much about. I think I bring a unique skill set to this position. I've been in healthcare for 28 and a half years. I also have local government experience and love my community here in Shawnee. I've worked with a variety of people from all walks of life. Shawnee is our home. We love this community. We're invested in this community. When I think back about this district, I think very much about how I've been so pleased to serve it. And I just want to thank you, and I hope to earn your vote on November 5th.
And House District 39, of course, covers much of the western half of Shawnee, as well as parts of Lake Quivira and that little pocket of Bonner Springs that goes south of the Kansas River. So let's give these candidates a chance to expound more. And we've been giving you an introductory question in these State House forums, give you a chance to talk a little bit more maybe about your district and your priorities. The order will fall to Bill Hammond in the District 117 contest. What do you see as the biggest priority or need from residents in this district? And you'll all get 90 seconds to respond to this.
There are a variety of things that are going to be before the legislature in the next session. School funding is going to be up, budget's going to be up, What are we gonna do about property taxes? That's going to be up. DeSoto, we have a little expansion in DeSoto. I wanna make sure if I'm elected that everything that has been promised DeSoto and the community from the state happens. I want a checklist. I wanna make sure that they get everything from the state that's been promised. I also wanna make sure if there are things that come up in that project that weren't expected, that are extra, that we go to the state and make sure we get the funding for those things. So that's one of the priorities in this district. Obviously, we need to focus on property taxes. I understand as I've gone door to door, people are really concerned, retirees are concerned, can they stay in their home with the continuing rise in property taxes? And I hope we have a chance to talk about that just a little bit more in this session.
Going over to District 39, and the order falls to Angela Stiens. You get to talk about the biggest priorities you see for the residents in District 39.
Well, I have knocked on, I'm sure like most of my opponents here, or one of my opponents and the other gentleman here from District 117, over 5,000 doors. And most of my constituents here are very concerned about the economy. They see inflation. I had a lady the other day who said she paid $3.77 for just a carton of eggs. The inflation has gotten out of control. After 3.5 more years, we can't afford any more of this. Here in Kansas, property taxes are sky high. In Shawnee alone, they went up 21%. People are being taxed out of their homes. I have seniors. I had a lady who told me that she's worried she had to write a property tax bill for $10,000. That is a much concern for me. I am very compassionate. I work with seniors for most of my career, and to see them just thinking how they have to flee this state because they can't afford their property taxes is a huge concern. And that's something that I really want to work on when we get back to Topeka. And I want to make sure that we really listen to the people here, because that is one thing that I feel like a lot of people that differentiates me from other people in this race. Thank you.
Staying in District 39, Vanessa Vaughn West, the biggest priority or need from residents in this district.
Yep. Oops. Am I?
Just press the button and you see a green light. There you go.
Perfect. Yeah, so I have had the pleasure of knocking a lot of doors, making sure that I am talking to people to understand what is important to them. My mantra has been to canvass, connect, and repeat. And I'm doing that because I know the value of understanding what the folks in our district value, and also being able to be a representative of those values, separating any personal ideologies from what the people actually want and being able to represent them as is needed. And so I actually share Representative Stiens' goal of really focusing on lowering taxes, recognizing the struggle that so many working families are having. We've seen these property taxes climb. We are seeing folks who really do have a concern for getting taxed out of their houses. This is something that we've got to spend some time on in the legislature, and something I'm committed to spending time on. Secondly, folks are very interested in public schools and the funding of public schools. I'm a mom. I've got 2 kids currently in public school, one in elementary and the other in middle school. It is very critical to me and others in our neighborhoods that we have strong schools where our teachers are supported, where our education curriculum is supported, and where we are making sure that we are developing the future leaders of this great state. Another area that folks are talking to me about at the door is related to healthcare accessibility and also privacy of their healthcare, being able to make their own healthcare decisions, having the autonomy to make those decisions for themselves without government interference. And then lastly, folks want a positive, inclusive government where they know that all Kansans will be represented in a way that will help them succeed and thrive.
Well, all 3 of you mentioned in some form or another taxes and the importance that holds for your constituents and for Kansans. And so let's start there. The order will fall to Angela Stiens in District 39, so that's where we'll begin. All of you will get 60 seconds to respond to this initial question about taxes. You all acknowledge that taxes are an issue, that your constituents are looking for some form of relief. So if elected or re-elected, how would you go about doing that? Are there other tax cuts or tax relief policies that you'd like to see the legislature pursue next year? You did mention residential property taxes. Is there anything the state can do in regards to that? Of course, all this on the backs of the fact that there was a tax relief package that was passed and signed into law this summer. So there were some things already put on the books there. But any more tax cuts, tax relief policies you would want to pursue, what would be your approach to it? Angela Stiens, 60 seconds.
Well, first of all, I'd like to state that we did pass unanimously a bipartisan tax plan. That was passed. We've had every vote on the floor, which from my understanding is a very amazing event in itself. We did get Social Security taxes eliminated. We were able to do those things, and I think that's very important, especially for our seniors. But we do need to fix our broken appraisal system. I would be in favor of doing a constitutional amendment to do a 4% cap on property taxes. That is something that we could put to the voters. We did vote on that in the Senate. It did not come to the House, unfortunately. But I do think that is something that we could definitely get done. And I want to just state, here in Shawnee, on the council, I have voted repeatedly to lower the mill levy 3 times. Last time, I'll just say people on the other aisle did not vote to do that, but I have voted to lower the mill levy here in Shawnee at the local level.
Staying in District 39, Vanessa Vaughn West, any other tax cuts, tax relief policies or priorities that you would pursue if elected next year? In particular, maybe respond to the idea of addressing property taxes through a cap.
Yeah, for sure. So a few things. One is that I want to be clear in that we have a surplus in our Kansas budget, and I want folks to know that I am not a person who wants to raise taxes in any way. I think there's some misnomers out there. I firmly believe that we need to be lowering taxes. That's the discussion we need to be having right now. So with that in mind, as we think about how to do that, there are some things that have been barriers to us making more tax progress than we've made. While we have made strides, we could have been having lower grocery taxes quite a while ago to the tune of saving millions of dollars if we had had a bipartisan consolidation on when that would go into effect. We're getting those reductions in January, thankfully, but this is a proposal the governor was looking to do many years ago. Secondly, when it comes to property taxes, we have a situation where we've got folks in homes who are on fixed incomes, we've got people who are working families who are seeing those property taxes go up, and
Finish the thought.
and so we really have a few options. One is to really consider how we are going to restore things like the LAVTRF, which was a cache of money that was given to counties and cities in order to reduce that tax burden, which often resulted in a decrease in mill levies.
And we'll stop there.
Okay.
Go back to Bill Hammond in District 117. Any other tax cuts, tax relief policies that you'd like to see the legislature pursue next year? Anything in particular regarding addressing rising residential property taxes?
I just want to go back to the LAVTR. I was actually a business officer at a community college when we had the LAVTR. It actually worked. It actually reduced taxes. Now, I understand the legislature decided to throw that out this year, and I didn't quite understand why, because that was a pretty simple way of reducing property taxes, but continuing with the services that you need at the local level. I was there as a business officer. It worked. Second thing I think we need to understand, when the Constitution came in, residential property taxes were about 30% of property taxes. That's off a little bit, but it's about 30%. Today, they're over 50%. What's happened? Well, we've given all sorts of tax breaks to businesses, and I like economic development. I don't want to overtax businesses, but we've seen that shift from the businesses to the residential. I think we need to take a hard look at that. I think we got to find some way to get residential property taxes down.
Continuing along this same line of questioning, we did get a number of questions from readers asking specifically about tax relief for seniors. The state does already offer some property tax rebate programs for low-income and disabled seniors as well as veterans. We do hear frequently from older Johnson Countyans living on fixed or retirement income worried about property taxes. So is there anything more the state can do to address this particular group of taxpayers? That order falls to Vanessa Vaughn West in District 39. 1 minute.
Yes, so I've got a few considerations for us to take a look at. The first is the expansion of our Homestead Act. So this would allow us to have more people, especially those on a fixed income, retirees, who would be qualified to be able to get that tax break. It's something that folks in the legislature on one side of the House tried to do, but failed because of the supermajority. Secondly, we could consider some sales tax exemptions for prescription drugs. We know that many of our seniors, many of our retirees have a higher burden of taxes or medical expenses, and so being able to look at that. Thirdly, tax breaks for caregivers. There are many of us who are in that sandwich side of life, where we're caring for aging adults as well as caring for growing children. Being able to alleviate some of the tax burden, not only for those aging adults, but for their caregivers. And then lastly, we have Medicaid opportunities, right? When we expand Medicaid, that creates some additional leverage in the budget and allows us to be able to do more with that funding. So I'll stop there.
Into District 117, Bill Hammond, any more that the state can do addressing seniors and taxes?
I think your seniors and taxes, I think the big thing was the Social Security.
Oh, yeah, just scoot a little bit forward, closer to the microphone. There you go.
I'm sorry, I told you this mic thing's a big deal. Hey, I'm glad you all can laugh out there. You know, it's good to have a political discussion and people aren't just growling at each other. So let's do that. All right, let's talk about taxes just a little bit, the seniors. I think the Social Security thing was a good deal. I'm on Social Security, by the way. I appreciate Social Security. Social Security is a good deal. Anybody who wants to privatize Social Security, I would never vote for that. I just want you to know that. Okay. So I'm glad to see we got the taxes off Social Security. I think we've got to look at more things like the Homestead Act so that we can really look at helping people stay in their homes and not be taxed to death out of their homes. I think we need to look at that.
And finishing this question back in District 39, Angela Stiens, anything more the state can do to address seniors and taxes?
Well, as my other people mentioned here, I would say the same thing. We did eliminate the Social Security taxes, which I appreciate. A lot of my seniors were very concerned about that. I did want to address one thing though, the grocery taxes that my opponent mentioned, they would have been eliminated by July 1st, except for the governor vetoed our last tax bill that we had at the end of session. So unfortunately, because we had to come back for a special session, we were unable to do that by July 1st. So now we have to wait till January for that. The other thing I think that was mentioned was the LAVTR. And unfortunately, the LAVTR was being used inappropriately, and the county was taking that and not using it to lower their property tax value that they were supposed to. So that's why we decided to get rid of the LAVTR, because it was not being used appropriately. So I think, as many have mentioned, I'm not against helping some of our, obviously the homestead tax, my grandmother used that. I'm in healthcare, I know what it is. I have friends that are taking care of their elderly parents at home, and that is a big issue. So I think those are things that we can look at the
And just give
legislative.
Vanessa Vaughn West just 30 seconds to respond to the particular point about the sales tax on food.
Yeah, two things. Let me just address the LAVTRF, and that is the
Local ad valorem tax reduction fund, by the way.
Thank you.
If you're watching.
It was on the budget form.
Yeah, and it's something that hasn't been funded for many, many years, and ultimately last session, the legislature decided to do away with it. So I think it is a little bit inaccurate to say that it wasn't being used properly. It wasn't able to be funded, so we didn't have that opportunity. When it comes to the grocery tax, that is something that was in the governor's budget when she was reelected 2 years ago, and it wasn't able to be discussed because of some limitations put forth by the supermajority.
Well, let's go to the next order. We'll fall to Bill Hammond in District 117. A couple of you mentioned education, public schools in your first response about priorities. We do have a question from the audience that kind of hits upon that, so I'll just ask that directly, and it also kind of gets the taxes as well. So we'll give you each 60 seconds to respond to this. And this is the questioner, whether you agree with the premise of the question or not, maybe you can address that, but what steps will you take to ensure that taxes are only used to support public schools in Districts 39 and 117 and across the state to meet the Kansas Constitution's requirement to fully fund public schools? So again, like I said, you can address the premise of that question, but you can also just respond to that in general. So Bill Hammond, the idea of making sure that schools are fully funded and only going to public schools in the words of this questioner.
Having attended schools for fair funding meetings for well over a decade and have been through multiple studies of school funding, that's about a 2-hour question. And I'm not being facetious. I'm not being facetious in that school funding is a complicated issue. And being able to measure the effectiveness, and also coming up to a system that will solve a district with 40,000 students or 400 is complicated. The difference between urban and rural, transportation costs, special ed, it's hard. What we've got to make sure of is that we care enough about our kids and our teachers and our people working in public schools that we do fund public education, and we fund it so we can attract the best teachers, the best administrators, and the best people in the country. And we will not do that with Capers 3. We're losing teachers. I was at a meeting of Kansas Association of School Boards. There are people who will not even apply in Kansas today because of Capers 3 in the retirement system.
Going over to District 39, the questioner from the audience, Angela Stiens, what would you do to ensure that Kansas schools, both in District 39 as well as beyond in Kansas, are fully funded as the Constitution requires?
Well, first of all, we have great schools here in Johnson County. We're really lucky. We have a DeSoto School District here that's excellent, that my kids have attended. We also have Shawnee Mission Northwest over here, so we have part of the Shawnee Mission District as well. And what I can tell you is that for the past 6 years, and I can even have a quote here from our governor, I am proud to say that in a bipartisan manner for the 6th year in a row, we have fully funded our public schools. We are equipping our students and educators with the resources they need to succeed in the classroom. We have also provided additional $75+ million for special ed. So we have a $5 billion project here. We have funding here in Kansas. So we spend a lot on our students here, and I'm proud to say that we have great schools here. I have had children that have been both in public and private schools, and I pay my taxes, and my kids are individuals. So I think, it depends on the child sometimes and where they go, but I can proudly tell you that we have fully funded schools every time.
And rounding out this question in District 39, Vanessa, Vaughn West. Again, the questioner asked what you do to ensure that public schools in District 39 and across the state meet the Kansas Constitution's requirements to be fully funded.
Yeah, it is the expectation and responsibility of our community to have strong public schools. It's something that can't be compromised. It sets us up as a state it sets our kids up for great futures, and it sets us up as a state that can compete internationally and globally in the economy. Without fully funding our public schools, without supporting special education, we are setting ourselves in a deficit. And so when we hear about programs such as voucher programs, which take money from the public schools and give it to special interests, private interests, so that kids can go to private school education, it really harms us. We already heard about the challenges that we are having in retaining and attracting teachers, getting them to stay, whether it's due to capers or other reasons. If you add that to the school voucher issue, we're gonna find ourselves in a very, very scary and detrimental place as we look at the future of Kansas.
A follow-up question for all three of you, and the order will fall to Angela Stiens in District 39. Embedded in that audience question was the notion that public dollars should go only to public schools. And so the question I want to ask you is, if elected, would you support measures that would allow the use of taxpayer dollars to go to individuals enrolled in private or religious schools? Certainly some measures have been debated in recent years, whether you call them school vouchers or tax credit scholarships. So would you use taxpayer dollars to go to be able to go to individuals enrolled in private or parochial schools? Let's start with Angela Stiens.
Yes, thank you. So what I would say is there are children here in failing schools. And where they live in some districts, they don't have some of the quality education that we do here in Johnson County. As far as tax credits go, I know that there's a $10 million cap on it. It does not come out of the public school fund, so I think that is a misinformation thing that is being floated around. So as far as that goes, it comes out of the general fund. So as far as tax credits for parents, just because you live in a failing school, I don't think that you should have to go to that school if your child is suffering. I know, for instance, I have when things were going around, I had children that were learning online, and my daughter was failing horribly. And then we decided that we needed to pull her and put her in a private school. So I think parents need to make those decisions for their children. I don't think it's fair to say because your child is in a failing school that you don't have the opportunity to go somewhere else where your child will get a quality education. And that's where I stand on that.
Staying in District 39, the question is, would you support the use of taxpayer dollars to go to individuals or families enrolled in private or parochial schools? Vanessa, Vaughn West.
Yep, so let me be clear, we are not talking about whether a parent has the right to choose where their child goes to school. What we're talking about is whether we're going to use taxpayer dollars to fund that parent's choice to send their child to private school. Those are two different things. And again, it is our responsibility as community members to ensure that our public schools are strong. If someone chooses to send their child to private school, as I actually chose to do one summer for my child who has special needs, I paid for that. I recognize the responsibility to pay for that. It is not the taxpayer's responsibility to siphon that money off in order to do that. Now let's also pause and think about why some of those rural schools are failing. And I think it has to do because we are losing hospitals, we're losing jobs, and we're losing those things in part because we're not fully and adequately funding our healthcare system through Medicaid. We're not investing in economic development and innovation. And we need to think about those decisions and their impact on these communities and recognize that those impact the schools as well.
To Bill Hammond in District 117, do you support the use of taxpayer dollars to go to individuals or families enrolled in private or parochial schools?
To me, it's a pretty simple thing. Having worked in the budgets for a lot of years, public money should go to public schools, private money should go to private schools. And I really do believe that. You know, we talk a lot about failing schools. I guess the only thing I want to say is we graduate well over 20,000 kids from high school in Kansas. I'm kind of tired of hearing about how we're failing everybody. I don't think we are. I think we got a pretty good school system across the state. Does that mean every school's perfect? No. Does it mean we're going to continue to improve? Yes. You know what? I'd like to put back in Kansas law that we want a world-class education for our kids. It used to be there. It was taken out. I want a world-class education for my Kansas kids.
We have a question from the audience regarding abortion, so that's the next topic we'll address, and we'll throw the order to Vanessa Vaughn West in District 39. I'm going to ask a follow-up question after I ask you all the same questions, so kind of depending on your answer to the first question, I'm going to ask you a follow-up question, so do be prepared for that, but I'm asking you all the first question first. Of course, 2 years ago, Kansas voters rejected a proposed amendment that would have explicitly stripped the right to abortion from the state constitution. It was seen as a major victory for abortion rights supporters. Debate about abortion has continued in the state legislature since. Lawmakers have debated dozens of bills seeking in some way to impact or limit abortion procedures in Kansas. It's widely expected that such measures will continue to come up next year. We do have a question from the audience. Asks it this way: do you support a woman's right to control her own fertility and exercise reproductive autonomy? That's one view. We also have other questions that highlight what they see as the sanctity of unborn life. So I think readers and audience members want to know where you stand on this issue. So do you support any new restrictions on abortions or laws in any way governing the procedure beyond what the state already has in place? Why or why not? And we'll start with Vanessa Vaughn West for 60 seconds.
Yep, let me be clear. I do not believe the government has a role in a woman's reproductive decisions, and I would vote to reflect that. I will always stand up against further restrictions on reproductive freedom. Women deserve the right to make our own decisions when it comes to our doctors, our health care, and that needs to be free from political interference. In August of 2022, this district, not just Kansas, this district voted no. We made it clear, the voters made it clear how we felt about this issue, but yet and still, in the past legislative season, we've had close to 20 bills where folks are still trying to chip away at reproductive freedom. We cannot let that stand. So healthcare decisions should be between a person and their doctor. Those choices should be autonomous. Those choices are reflective of where that person is. I'm not trying to get into the heads of why people make different decisions, but I believe that they should have the ability to make them.
And a follow-up question for you, Vanessa. Abortion opponents say there is a compelling state interest in protecting unborn life. Moves to do that by, say, allocating funding for pregnancy resource centers, which the legislature has done. They say that promotes alternatives to abortion that are cast as a way to give women safety and support during pregnancy and childbirth. Your response to that idea that such laws are bills and measures that have been debated in the last 2 years, that they don't infringe on the right to abortion, actually make women safer?
So there are already places where folks can get education about how to navigate the healthcare decisions related to a pregnancy. I don't believe that we need additional support in those areas. People can get that as needed. I will say this though, when it comes to when it comes to having a child, there are many things that go into that. And there are maybe some mental health supports that we have underfunded. There are some additional things that we can do as a community in order to support folks, not just during the pregnancy period, but once the child is here. What are we going to do to ensure that we have the resources, the community supports in order to provide for folks who may need additional care, who may need additional support? Those things could include childcare vouchers and other things, so.
Going to District 117, Bill Hammond, the initial question to you, do you support any new restrictions or measures on abortion that the likes of which that have been debated in the last 2 years in the Kansas legislature? Why or why not?
I have a walk card. I discovered that when you run for office, the first thing your people tell you gotta have is a walk card. I didn't know what a walk card was. Bill's priorities: women's right to bodily autonomy. Women's health care is family health. Decisions made between a woman and her physician must be honored. Bodily autonomy is precious and is no concern of the government. That's my position, clear and simple.
Your response to the idea that some of the measures that have been debated in recent years don't necessarily infringe on the right to abortion, which was decided by the 2022 vote, but actually make women safer, the process of pregnancy safer?
I think most of the things that have come out have basically tried to make it harder for women to do what the Constitution of Kansas says they're entitled to do. And I think the legislature ought to keep their nose out of it.
Going down to the end of the table, Angela Stiens in District 39, the initial question to you: do you support any of the types of measures that have been debated in the last 2 years in the Kansas legislature that put either some new restriction or limit or in any way impact the procedure of abortion in Kansas? Why or why not?
Well, first, sorry about that.
There you go.
So, as the candidates up here also have mentioned, we already voted about that on here in Kansas, and everyone wants abortion to be legal here. I personally am pro-life. The 20 bills that they are talking about did not even make it out of committee. So when we keep talking about that, I'm like, hey, everybody, by the way, abortion is already legal here in Kansas. Everybody knows that. The other thing that I might add is that, when I go to doors, and I've gone to vote Democrat, Republican, and unaffiliated voters, I have had this conversation come up twice. Most people here really care about the economy, what's going on with inflation, and property taxes. The abortion debate has already been settled here in Kansas. So why we keep bringing this up is beyond me. We have not restricted anything, and to say that is not true.
And the follow-up question to you, then, I think for some readers, though, the measures that we're talking about that may have not made it to the end, but were at least brought forward in the sessions in the last 2 years, they do see those as invasive, or at least against the spirit of the 2022 vote. How do you respond to that sentiment?
Well, I'm going to share a personal story with you. I myself found myself in an unplanned pregnancy. I was 17 years old when I found myself pregnant with my daughter. She's the most beautiful, wonderful woman and mother. I also have 3 grandchildren, so I thank my daughter very much for that. It doesn't have to be the end of the world. A crisis pregnancy center helped me. They helped me and supported me. I am so grateful for those people and what they did. And without people like them, I don't know where I would have been. So I'm not saying these decisions are easy for women, so I don't pretend to say that that's the story that everyone has or the ending. But I will tell you this, women should have options. If we truly are pro-choice, why not support women who choose to bring their baby into the world? Also fathers. So to say that and just disregard that is not fair. There are women who would like to carry their babies to term, but they don't always have that support. So I think we should provide that here when we can.
Another question from the audience on a slightly different topic. It is about health care. The order falls to Bill Hammond in District 117. The wording of this question is this: what is your approach to providing health care for all Kansans? How would you go about doing it? What policies would you advocate for? What approach would you have? 60 seconds, Bill Hammond.
While I was in western Kansas, I got involved and I was on the board of a federally qualified health center, so I became very much aware of people who didn't have health care. And I also became aware of the number of people we couldn't help because we had not expanded Medicaid. I was also aware that we had dental deserts in western Kansas. And we had areas where a dentist would leave a small town and suddenly we couldn't get a dentist. And so I got involved in Oral Health Kansas. And that involvement led me to find out that all across the state, people without dental care had this horrible thing that happened. You know, the tooth doesn't get better by itself. And so we had people showing up at ERs at 2 o'clock in the morning. The emergency room could give them antibiotics and pain medication and a big bill and didn't take care of the tooth. I think we need to expand Medicaid, and then I think we need to look at ways to better get preventive care to people instead of waiting until it's crisis care.
Question over to District 39, Angela Stiens. What is your approach to providing health care for all Kansans? What's your philosophy, any specific policies that you would advocate or push for if, in your case, reelected?
Thank you. Yes. So when we talk about expanding a lot of this, there are a lot of able-bodied adults that can get insurance. A lot of people that make around, say, $25,000 a year can get that for free. Now, this does not mean expansion currently for people that are currently receiving it, like seniors and children, the vulnerable. I am very much an advocate for shortened wait lists, increased reimbursement for our doctors. You know, I work in healthcare, so I see what happens. A lot of our seniors, for instance, they get on these Medicaid Advantage plans or different things, they can't afford. Then they get back and they think, oh, well, I thought this was gonna cover everything. Oh, we had no idea, no one told us that was gonna cover that. And you know, we can have all these things and say, oh yeah, let's go ahead and expand Medicaid. But then you also have to have doctors to see those patients. We have doctors leaving. At my particular practice alone, we have one nurse practitioner and a few doctors that have left. Doctors can't afford some of the reimbursements that Medicaid is only paid. So we're gonna have to look at a lot of that. There's a lot of discussions that have to be made. And in Oklahoma alone, they did Medicaid expansion. And I was just looking at this. They claimed only 126,000 uninsured Oklahomans would be added, but the actual number is nearly 100%. They said that out of that, they spent $2.1 billion. So their exact cost that they said they were gonna spend skyrocketed. So I think we really need to look at those before we just say we're going to expand something when we don't even know all of the details.
And ending this question in District 39, Vanessa Vaughn West, the questioner again from the audience, what is your approach to providing health care for all Kansans? What philosophy would you have? What approaches and specific policies might you advocate for?
I'm going to recenter us on this issue because I think it's really important that we remember what and who Medicaid is for. It's for working families. It's for service providers, retail workers, child care providers, people with disabilities, 75% of whom don't qualify for CAN Care or Medicare, and it would cover 7,400 veterans. We in Kansas, as one of only 10 states in the union that has not expanded Medicaid, we are losing out on more than $6 billion in tax dollars. We've spent a lot of tonight talking about taxes and tax relief. We have many working folks who are in this room, folks who are having Medicaid monies taken out of your check and going to other states. It does not make sense for us to leave this money on the table, to leave so many Kansans sitting in the lurch without health care. And this is something that we have the opportunity to make a swift decision about and to correct very quickly.
A couple of questions from the audience regarding another topic, guns, and they come from, I think, different perspectives. So this is kind of the feel of the room a little bit. So we have one question that asks, the questioner says, he or she says, guns are the leading cause of death among children in the United States. Would you support gun laws such as background checks on all gun purchases, red flag laws, safe gun storage laws? We have another questioner who says this: do the candidates agree with Kamala Harris's position that the government could have the ability to come into your home and check that you're treating your guns safely? I think with the imposition that maybe that is too invasive. So where do you stand on gun rights, gun control, gun safety, however you want to frame it, and what laws or not would you advocate for? Angela Stiens.
So first of all, I just want to say I believe in the Second Amendment. My husband and I are responsible gun owners. I am sure most of our Johnson County citizens are, and people across this state. I agree, you know, we want safe storage. I safely store my guns, okay? I don't have them just out in the open. I have 5 children, so I'm certainly not gonna leave anything out. I have 3 grandchildren too. The thing is though, government overreach, how do you get, I'm just curious, are you gonna just break into people's homes and like knock on their door and say, hey, let's see where your guns are stored? I think that sounds pretty unbelievable. And so I don't see how that would even be enforced. We wanna keep our schools safe. I have 3 grandchildren. It makes me sad that kids have to practice shooter drills. But you know, one thing, and I heard this mentioned the other night, and I thought it was a great point, is mental health. Mental health in this country is a very serious issue. I am a very big advocate for mental health. I can tell you right now here in Shawnee, we have had co-responders that we put on our teams with our police force. They have helped tremendously to diffuse a lot of these situations, because there's a lot of people that have a lot of mental health, depression. We have a lot of veterans, I think,
Finish that thought,
that
yeah.
was mentioned earlier. And so we need to really look, and yes, that's just part of the problem, but there are a lot of problems that we need to address when it comes to
Staying in
gun
District
safety.
39, Vanessa Vaughn West, the question about guns, again, a couple perspectives from the room at least, some asking about specific gun legislation, others worried about the government being too invasive and trampling on the Second Amendment. Where do you stand?
As a gun sense candidate, I stand for common sense gun laws. This is not about moving away from the Second Amendment. I fully respect the right to bear arms, but with that right comes responsibility. And that responsibility means that as individuals, as community members, we must ensure the safety of those around us. And so that is simply done quite easily with red flag laws, with safe, secure, and with many things that are just helping us. And so what we could do is that we're not talking about extreme measures here. We're really talking about sensible gun storage, sensible gun actions. And the kicker is sensible gun owners want sensible gun laws. This is not extreme. This is very manageable. And this is something that protects not only our children in schools who are going through these drills, but it also protects us as a community. And so I'm not trying to dip into anybody's home, but I do think that just as we have a responsibility to be safe drivers with a driver's license, we need to have a responsibility to have safe storage and safe control of our guns.
And rounding out this issue about guns, where you stand and what specific measures, if any, you would support, or philosophically where you fall on this issue in District 117. Bill Hammond, your response.
You know, when you have her go first, it's really hard to up that any. I just want to say I applaud everything she says, and one of my first endorsements was Moms Demand Action. They've got some reasonable things, and I support those.
And that's period. That's the end of
That's
it.
it. What else do I say?
Yeah.
I can go on.
We can.
I used to preach. I mean, I was a minister. I'd go for an hour.
I don't want to court that right now. I don't want to test fate there. Okay. A couple final questions before we get to the 7 o'clock forum. So I believe this falls to Vanessa Vaughn West. That's the order we're in, correct? So District 39. So this was a question that was posed by an audience member in the last forum. It still is apropos to any state house race, and it's on a lot of our readers' minds. We had a lot of questions about it in our email before these forums. So a question like this, do you think Kansas elections are secure? What steps, if any, would you want to take in the future to continue to keep them secure? 60 seconds.
Yes, I do think that Kansas elections are secure. Anytime we start going down a road of questioning the security of our elections, we are beginning the slippery slope of questioning the security of this democracy. We have the ability to cast votes as individuals who've done research, as individuals with our own passions and identities, and we have many levels of federal, state, county, local safety controls to ensure that those votes are taken and nothing happens to them. And so this is one of those situations where we have a solution that is looking for a problem. We don't have a problem with election safety. And so I encourage you all to go out and vote, to do that with confidence, and to really honor the decisions that are made through that electoral process.
Going to District 117, Bill Hammond, do you think Kansas elections are secure? If there's anything else that you would want to see the state do to make sure that those elections remain secure, if you think so, or make them more secure?
You know, this thing has been kicked around, and our Secretary of State, who happens to be in the other party than I am, has basically said we've got secure elections. We've had people, okay, if there's a problem, let's go find it. We can't seem to find the problem. Why are we still kicking it around? I'd like to take a different approach on this. You know, I've knocked on a lot of doors, and we have a lot of older voters in my district. I really wish we could do more with vote by mail. You know, when my daughter lived in Oregon, I thought vote by mail sounded a little crazy. I thought, what on earth are these people doing out there, you know? And what we discovered was Oregon really doesn't have a problem with voting, doesn't have a problem with security, but what they do by having vote by mail, people get their ballot and they can find also those bottom issues. For example, you're gonna get to vote on a lot of judges this year. How many people have researched the judges? Hey, I'm impressed. Unfortunately, the majority of us haven't yet. But if you got a ballot early, you could find those things, look them up and study more. So I'm in favor of vote by mail for people who need it.
Rounding out this question back in District 39, Angela Stiens, do you think our elections in Kansas are secure? Any other steps you would like to take in the future to continue to keep them secure or make them more secure?
Well, I agree with the other candidates here. Voting is secure here in Kansas, like Bill Hammond mentioned there, the security of our states. Secretary of State Scott Schwab has said that. We require voter ID here, which I think is very important, and I appreciate our Attorney General here in Kansas for making that. Also, there were many election laws that were looked at before I was sworn in this last session. And people want to trust our elections. You know, I want to trust our elections. Who doesn't? Nobody wants to feel like, oh my gosh, my vote's not going to be counted. Voting is a privilege. That is something that we really take seriously here. So I wish everyone would actually look at the candidates before they voted them, because I think that's really important too. I think many of you probably here in the audience are doing those things. So I appreciate you for coming to this forum and exercising your right to look at that and look at the candidates and what they stand for, because we do stand differently on some of these issues. But I can tell you here in Kansas, I do believe that we have integrity in our elections.
And final question, it'll kind of stand in for a closing statement. It does come from the audience. So this will be the last one, and I believe the order falls to Bill Hammond to begin this one in District 117. This is one audience member asking, if elected or re-elected, how do you plan to regularly meet with or listen to constituents to hear and honor their concerns? So constituent relations, maybe issues of transparency a little bit. So this will be your last answer, and we'll start with Bill Hammond, 1 minute.
Gerrymandering in both parties do it, and it's wrong. I have a district that starts, I gotta get closer to the mic. This mic is bugging me. I have a district that starts in Douglas County, but I don't have Lawrence, and I don't have that other city, Baldwin. Yeah, straight. I've got the southern part of Eudora, the northern part of DeSoto, a couple of rural areas, and then 80 or 63% of my voters are up here in Shawnee. I have thought a lot about this because I know Highway 10 better than I ever thought I would know Highway 10. I have traveled that. It means that what it's going to take for me is, one, I want to do a newsletter on a regular basis. I want to do that both hard copy and I want to do it by email. It means that I'm going to have to be at a variety of forums, functions, both in Douglas County, Johnson County, and many places in between. It's not going to be an easy district to serve, but I'm committed that if I get elected, I'm going to be available to the voters where they need me and where they want me so they can ask questions.
Same question down to District 39, Angela Stiens. If elected or re-elected, how do you plan to regularly meet with or listen to constituents to hear and honor their concerns in District 39?
Well, I can tell you that I'm already doing that already. I get emails, I get phone calls, I frequently meet with people. I'll go to their homes, whatever they request. I'm very much about being a people person. That is something that I pride myself on. I think working in healthcare has helped me that because I've served so many different diverse people throughout my career. I will tell you also, people know where I live. They literally know my address. I hate to tell you, they probably even know my garage code. So as far as that goes, I send out daily or not daily, but I try to send out as much communications as I can. I send a letter from when I was first elected from the State House. I've tried on the council. I'm very good about sending out letters as well. And my constituents know that I'm available. I try to answer people in a timely manner. Sometimes things do get a little lost sometimes. And so, we're all human, right? I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I do care about my constituents. I make it a point to make sure that they know that they're being heard. And that that is one big thing, is that I'm representing them, whether they're, with my team or not my team, whoever they are, we work on both sides of the aisle. It doesn't matter, you have to represent all when it comes to this district.
And then staying in District 39, Vanessa Vaughn West, last answer, last question. If elected or re-elected, how do you plan to regularly meet with or listen to constituents to hear and honor their concerns in District 39?
So I'm already exemplifying this. For those of you all who know me and have been around this campaign, you've been able to be linked into the many things that we're doing to connect with people, whether it is after my 9-to-5 job, going out and knocking doors and talking with people, whether it is holding forums, talking to voters, bringing constituents together to discuss issues of importance, whether it is sending out a weekly newsletter to let you know how I feel on certain policy issues. These are things that we are already beginning to do, in addition to the social media communications, in addition to the phone calls, in addition to the text. So I am someone who prides myself on being very accessible, someone who is in this race to be the voice for the people, because I understand that in order to be a good representative, I have to understand what is on your mind. I have to know what is important to you, and we cannot do that without having honest conversations with each other. And so I will commit to doing that moving forward.
Well, I want to thank the candidates for their participation in tonight's forum. Give them a round of applause for showing up and sharing their views in a civil manner. We have another forum to get to, so I'll make this short if you're watching online or in the room. So deadline to register to vote is Tuesday, October 15th. Early voting starts Saturday, October 19th. Election day is Tuesday, November 5th. Please get out and vote and do the research on the candidates. We always like to encourage our readers to vote.